What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to some more conference championship predictions where today, why not? Let's just go through all Power 4 conferences and preview and predict their conference championships, starting out with a top 3 matchup. The winner of this game is in great contention to get the number 1 overall seed, while the loser, well, still probably going to host a first-round game, but it's a top 3 matchup in Indianapolis, Indiana for the Big Ten Championship. Penn State, they have been lifted into this position because of Michigan's upset win over Ohio State. Penn State has won tiebreakers over Indiana. They are here going up against the only undefeated team left in the country. The Oregon Ducks have been on top of college football ever since that win over Ohio State, and they look to cement that top spot in the college football playoff with a win on Saturday. The Nittany Lions and the Ducks should be a fun contest from Lucas Oil, and I'll dive on into everything you need to know about this game in just a little bit. But before we do that, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you so much for watching the videos and just showing your support in whatever way you can. If you would like to show your support, well, the biggest way you can do that is by subscribing and ringing that bell, which you especially should do if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am. But if you simply just want to kick back, relax, and watch this video and some of my other videos, I greatly appreciate that as well. You can also like, comment, share, and any other way you interact with the channel helps to support it. And if you want to go give me a follow on any social medias, you're welcome to do so. It's at TailgateNate29. Hopefully going to be posting a little bit more about what I do as a sports media student here in just moments, maybe more like next year in 2025. But with all that said and done and out of the way, please show your support in any way you can. And let's now start diving on in, talking about some conference championships. Boy, there's going to be some really, really fun conference championship games this year. We've already previewed 3 of them, all that are happening on Friday. All of these you see today are happening on Saturday. Again, today, we're going through the Power 4. Penn State and Oregon. How do we do preview predictions around here? Well, we're going to go through some keys to the game when each team possesses the football. So we are first going to look at some keys when Penn State is on offense against this Oregon defense, and then we'll flip it. We'll take a look at the Duck offense against the Nittany Lions defense, and at the end of the video, I'll give you some final thoughts, how I think this game is going to play out, and at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we'll give you a prediction for who I think is going to come away the winner of the Big Ten Championship. Can Oregon win it in their first year in the conference, or is Penn State going to win their first Big Ten Championship in their first Big Ten Championship since 2016? It would be their second Big Ten championship game win, because they did win it back in 2016, Trace McSorley being the MVP of that game. Let's now start talking about this matchup. Of course, we're going to start by previewing the Penn State offense. So this is the Penn State offense that we know is built through the run, right? Kaytron Allen, Nick Singleton, both of those guys are absolute workhorses in this backfield, and both of them can serve to have some problems for this Oregon defensive front, but we'll talk more about why in a little bit. Right now, though, let me introduce you to the 2 running backs. Nick Singleton, 733 yards and 7 touchdowns this year, and Kaytron Allen, 698 yards and 5 touchdowns this season. They do like to throw Bo Pribula in there, a backup quarterback. Drew Aller has shown ability to get outside of the pocket and run, and then Tyler Warren touches the football in pretty much every capacity here for this team. But Drew Aller has performed really well this year. 2,668 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 5 picks. Not a stat line that's going to make your eyes bulge out of your head, but a pretty darn good stat line from him. He loves his tight end target, Tyler Warren. Almost 1,000 yards for him on the season, and assuredly should get 1,000 yards by the time this game is said and done. 978 yards and 6 touchdowns, and I've already mentioned you can have him rush the football as well. In fact, I think there's been 1 game, if not 2, where Tyler Warren has been the leading rusher for Penn State. Now, we'll talk about why that's a problem in just a little bit, and we'll talk about why it's a good thing, but also a bad thing that Tyler Warren is Penn State's top target. I want to talk about this run game for a second. We know Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen are absolute workhorses, and even though none of their stat lines are going to blow you away, it's not going to make your jaw drop, both of them can provide things that will make this Oregon defense susceptible to some big plays and susceptible to wearing down. Because you take a look at the Oregon defense, I mean, their secondary has been absolutely phenomenal, but the rush defense has been suspect in a lot of games this season. It was pretty solid against Ohio State, but if you remember early in the year, it couldn't contain Ashton Genty, okay, well, who could, right? But there have been a couple other, maybe not full 60-minute games, but a couple other spots here and there where Oregon's run defense just looks very, very shaky, and it is the way you want to try to establish an offensive attack against this defense. Now, it's still hard to do because Oregon's got a lot of great players on that defensive front that can also provide pressure to the quarterback. Talk more about that later. But Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, I think, have a lot of ability to exploit the run defense problems that Oregon does have. And if Penn State is going to be ripping off 4, 5, 6, 7 yards per carry, it could be a long day for this Oregon defense. But where Oregon has a massive advantage is also where Penn State has a massive disadvantage, and that is matchup talent on the outside. It's why Penn State lost the game against Ohio State this year. If they would have won that game, we're talking about a 1-2 in the Big Ten championship game. But they lost that game, and the reason they lost that game is because of the talent that is on the outside. Tyler Warren is great, and he's a really, really good player to have, a great asset to have on the team. But you take a look elsewhere at Harrison Wallace, pretty solid player. Evans and Clifford and Fleming, they're just not guys that are going to wow you on the outside. And Penn State's offensive scheme doesn't really spread you out. You have to try to spread Oregon out here in this game, and I don't think it's going to happen. A little bit of a preview for my prediction, but Penn State just doesn't have the talent on the outside to be able to match up with some of these elite secondaries, and Oregon's secondary is one of the best that has been shown in college football this season. They only allow 171 passing yards per game. Now, what Penn State can do is they can chip away with the pass game. They can chip away with the short completions to Tyler Warren. Maybe you have Singleton or Allen, more than likely Singleton. He's more shown to catch passes out of the backfield than Allen. Get on some wheel routes, and you can rip off big plays that way. But I think Penn State's going to have to find something with Wallace, Evans, Clifford. Somebody has got to be able to make some big plays, some chunk yardage throws down the field. Drew Aller has to deliver on those as well, but James Franklin and the offensive staff here needs to be able to draw something up, to be able to test this Oregon secondary and be able to at least attempt to get some downfield passing moving forward. But Penn State has had a lot of really, really close calls this year. You look at one number in particular, and that is third down percentage. Overall, Penn State is a very good third down offense. But let's take a look at games that Penn State has struggled this season. They struggled on the road against Minnesota just a couple of weeks ago. What did they do on third down? 1 for 11. Pin that one up there. The loss against Ohio State this season. What did they do on third down? 3 of 11 in that game. The really, really close call against Bowling Green in non-conference play. What did they do there? 2 of 9 on third down. The game on the road against USC where they needed overtime to win. 4 of 13. This is not a coincidence. When Penn State does not do well on third down, it doesn't perform well, period. It gets in close games against teams that it should handle, or it outright loses a game like it did against Ohio State this year when the third down offense wasn't moving. So third down struggles equals Penn State struggles, and if Oregon wants to be able to shut Penn State away, and especially Oregon's going to be able to exploit the matchup problems on the outside. They have the horses in the secondary to keep up with whatever Penn State wants to do in the pass game, because Penn State hasn't shown to be doing much creative things in the pass game. But where Oregon can get a huge substantial advantage is if that third down defense looms large. If Penn State is around their season average converting on third downs, maybe even a little bit below at, say, 40%, that gives an advantage to Penn State. If Oregon can shut that down and win the money downs, huge advantage for the Oregon Ducks. Let's now talk about Dillon Gabriel and this Oregon offense. Dillon Gabriel's probably going to be going to New York as a finalist for the Heisman Trophy because he has been outstanding this year. 3,275 yards, 24 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions, and does have 7 rushing touchdowns on the season as well. This has been an offense that has run through him, and Dillon Gabriel has got all the talent in the world surrounding him on the outside. But in the backfield, Jordan James, 206 carries, 1,166 yards, and 13 touchdowns. That's a guy Penn State's going to have to watch out for, but this is a Penn State defense that is really darn good at defending the run. Okay, so look, let's go ahead and see what Oregon has on the outside to match up with this Penn State secondary. Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, the tight end Terrence Ferguson. Elite talent. And there's not one true guy that's going to beat you. No guy in this Oregon wide receiver room has over 700 yards, but Johnson, Stewart, Holden, Ferguson, they're all hovering right around at least 450. They're anywhere between 490 and 685. Ferguson's at 490, Johnson's at 685, and the other two are kind of sandwiched in between with totals right around the 600 mark. You can go to anybody. So when you think you shut one guy down, the other guy is open, is just as dynamic as everybody else on that football field. That plays into the hands of Oregon really, really well. But this Penn State rush defense, I just talked about how good it was at being able to defend the run. Well, let's take a look at the one game that they did lose against Ohio State. They couldn't defend the run. Ohio State pounded the rock. 40 carries, 176 yards, and 4.4 yards per carry. Now, I do not believe Ohio State had a rushing touchdown in that game. No, they did not. But you take a look at some of the other games where Penn State has struggled. USC was able to rip off 7.9 yards per carry against this Penn State team. Minnesota, they actually did hold Minnesota's rush offense to under 3 yards per carry. There were some other things that happened there in that game, but if you're able to rip off chunk yardage runs against this Penn State defense, be able to win the battle on a third down, well, that's going to play into your hands. But Penn State has aggression. They have force, and they have so many great pass rushers that can beat this Oregon offensive line. Now, ever since allowing 7 sacks throughout the first 2 games, Oregon's offensive line has only allowed 5 through the last 10. That's a pattern that's probably going to continue here into the Big Ten Championship. But Gabriel has plenty of weapons to exploit some of the holes within this Penn State defense. Miller Moss did have himself a fairly solid day, if I am remembering correctly. I mean, yeah, 220 yards, 6.5 yards per throw. Not necessarily super great, but Penn State, when one thing is working really, really well, so say their rush defense is working really, really well, the other one becomes a little susceptible. You just take a look at that USC game as a perfect example. The secondary attacked the wide receiver room, and they were able to get pressure to Miller Moss, and it led him to have a subpar day compared to what he had been performing like so far up until that point in the season. And then you go ahead and you take a look at that game against Ohio State, kind of the same thing. They couldn't really defend Jeremiah Smith, but Will Howard only had 182 yards. It was that rush game that they couldn't defend, and vice versa. When the pass defense is working really, or I should say when the run defense is working really, really well, the pass game is susceptible. However, the Nittany Lions, I think, are going to need constant backfield pressure, which I think they can get. Penn State can get into the backfield. They can create pressure because they have a lot of really, really good edge rushers and guys that can get back to the quarterback, especially that of Abdul Carter. He's got double-digit sacks this year with 10. Danny Dennis Sutton is the other one that comes to mind. They can bring guys like Durant in there. Kobe King at linebacker can get back to the quarterback, and all those guys and more are more than capable of generating TFLs as well. I think Penn State's also going to need to get some turnovers here in this game, but the other thing that I really, really want to try to hammer home here is there are times, and in big games like this, where Oregon has missed opportunities. They missed opportunities against Ohio State, and if you go back to last year, missed opportunities, either missed field goals or taking the field goal when they should have had 6 points, or a rogue 4th down conversion that goes awry and they don't get it, can turn the tide of games. It happened twice against Washington last year, and it could have happened against Ohio State this year if the Ohio State final drive would have worked out a little bit differently. If Penn State can make Oregon settle for field goals, and Penn State can get off the field when Oregon tries to go for it on 4th down and play sort of a bend but don't break style of defense, I think that's going to play into the hands of Penn State really, really well. And if they capitalize off those missed opportunities, say they stop Oregon on 4th down, you got to go get 6 points on the other end of the field. That is a must. What this game comes down to, though, I think is a lot of matchup problems. And in more fields than not, I like Oregon better than Penn State. I think they have more talent on the outside, especially at wide receiver. I think they're better going to be able to exploit the Penn State secondary than what Penn State might be able to do against Oregon. And I think Oregon's strength of passing the football and getting it downfield to the playmakers is going to better be able to beat the Penn State defense than, say, Penn State just trying to ground and pound their way to this victory. Now, if Penn State forces Oregon into a lot of missed opportunities, maybe forces Dylan Gabriel to throw a pick or two, that can definitely make this game very, very interesting. The game is a 3.5-point spread for Oregon right now, and I just think Oregon, too many ways to win this game, too many skill positions and too many rooms where I like them better, and I like the talent better than what Penn State has, and that's why I think Oregon is going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it pretty convincingly as well. I see this being a close game going into halftime, but I think Dylan Gabriel and this Oregon offense turn it into sixth gear and they really get going. Maybe a late score. They're able to hold Penn State, but I got a 30-17 win for the Oregon Ducks. I think the style of football that this game is going to come down to, I think Oregon is better suited to play that style of football. And that style of football is, again, just being able to exploit the matchups and play the style that Oregon wants to. They want to be able to force Penn State off the field early and often. They want to be able to get on the field, grind out this defense, hit a big play or two, and get into the end zone. I think Oregon's more equipped to win this game, and their first year in the Big Ten, they will walk away as the Big Ten champs. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comment section down below. Again, 30-17 for the Oregon Ducks. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.